Yeah, I mean, I don't like really know a whole lot about your story. Obviously, we chat, but yeah. So I'd love to like kind of get a background on how you got started, and obviously you were originally from Saskatchewan, right? And that's where you started your first supplement store.
Yeah, I started my first supplement store in Saskatchewan, in Regina. It was a lot of fun. That was 2018, something like that. It was kind of like one of the first ones outside of Saskatoon, the first supplement world outside of Saskatoon. So it was a new thing. It's certainly something else now. It's much bigger now. It's like turned into like a real big franchise. Kind of at the time, it was like more of a low key kind of handshake deal in some sense, and it was a lot of fun. Taught me a lot. I didn't know nothing about retail. I came from kind of like sales in the corporate world, and obviously coaching and personal training. So it was an interesting path. Taught me a lot. And obviously I still have some here, which is fun. With Braden, which is kind of a whole new path that's unveiling. But as you know, moving your life across provinces, it's all new here. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been here long enough that it's like Alberta's home for me now. But yeah, it's the first couple of years was the toughest when I first moved here. Like it was hard to get settled in, and you're missing everybody, and that does fade though. You know what I mean? And like the opportunity in this province, I felt like was
I really
tenfold.
noticed that a lot, like a lot. Uh, Something I didn't. It's kind of like one of those things you can't understand until you feel it. Like I conceptualized that there would be more opportunity here, which is like what was calling me here in some sense, and obviously the people. But just like even getting to know you is a prime example, and there's 10, 12, 15 other, people I've met that just kind of open doors, connections, and we're all networking together. It creates a lot of opportunities. Saskatchewan's a much smaller place. It's a much smaller place.
So like going back, you originally started personal training. That was the first. So you're in a corporate world, and then you started personal training.
I think it's relevant to go back to how I got into fitness probably. I was like obese my whole life. Came from a small Saskatchewan farming community. And when I was 21, I fell 5 stories, broke my L1 through L5 spinal vertebrae, both heels, my left ankle, and my right elbow. It's kind of fun. My right elbow still.
Crazy. I did not know that. Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, so I was, like very, very down and out, let's say. I was just a kid. I was just 21, pretty much. I was selling the construction material, so I went up on the roof to check some failing product, and it was a tall 412 pitch wood frame building, and I stepped on the top piece of sheeting at the peak that wasn't nailed, so it just trapdoored me. So it just kind of, I fell through the rafters down onto the floor, and obviously there was some like fear of, and I kind of still walk funny. My hips are all shifting now. My right leg was not working very good, and then as a 21-year-old farm kid from a small town, I think like now it's ironic, but I had never got my blood work done that I could remember. Like I'd been to the hospital for some fights and stitches and stuff, but other than that, it wasn't like I was going for routine checkups. So when they came back, it was like, yeah, you've damaged your body physically, but like you have high cholesterol, you have high blood pressure, you're pre-diabetic. I was really obese, I was really, really heavy. And as you can see, I'm not like a huge person. So carrying like I think it was like 300 just about.
Oh my gosh. We'll have to can we add a picture in of that after?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll send you one. We can definitely add it in. And to be honest, I think some of the pictures I have are not even quite the worst that I looked, because the pictures that I have are the ones that I allowed to exist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
no,
when
100%. Yeah.
like I was obese and someone take a picture, like I didn't have my shirt off very much and stuff. And if I did, it was kind of like, let me see that, So those are the ones I have that I thought I looked good at the time, obviously. And that wasn't even the bottom, actually. Getting out of the hospital was a very interesting experience. Like I had never had injuries like that, obviously. And I got super addicted to Oxycontin and Valium through that kind of recovery process, which then spiraled my life to a pretty low bottom. I had a relationship that kind of fizzled because of that. I mean, that whole situation was very dark and very rough. And it took probably 6 months. 3 months I laid in a chair pretty much with boots on my feet, like those plastic boots to keep my ankles intact and stuff. And when I could start moving around, I went to the doctor for a checkup. You're going to think this is funny now. And I went for a checkup, and I think I was like 297 when I had seen him like 3 months before. They weighed me, and I was like 306 because I was just sitting in a chair, like probably eating my feelings, you know, basically. Yeah. And he was like, I told you, like, if you don't get this together in 3 more months, when you come back here, if your blood sugar is not better and, you know, some of your health markers aren't better, we're going to put you on insulin. And I was so terrified of an insulin needle that is one of the many, you know, you can kind of imagine it was like a landslide of things had been making me feel this way. But that was the final straw to be like, I can't be needling myself. Like, for sure not at all. So I was like, I don't know what to do, but I know what not to do. You know, people oftentimes, you know, if you take account of yourself, it's like, what stupid things am I doing? And what things am I not doing that I could choose to make smarter choices? So I just started to like investigate a little bit, do a little research, try to lose some weight myself. Lo and behold, I started going to the gym. Who knew that I was going to love it? You know, like I had Arnold's Encyclopedia, you know, like 6 weeks in, I'm like pure bro. You know, like just training us, still obese, but I loved the training style. I'd never, you know, I'd done some martial arts and played some individual sports, golf and, you know, different things, but I had never like pushed my body in that sense. And I started losing a lot of weight, you know, like boom, boom, boom. And lo and behold, it took me probably 18 months, something like that. I lost like 155 pounds. Wow, that's amazing. And then I competed in my first bodybuilding show. I got dead last, you know, which was a very dark and hard experience because for me, I had never even, you know, growing up in a house of faith and a small community where kind of my teachers taught my uncles and my dad, and, you know, everyone knew everybody. And it was kind of like, I thought I was obese because that's how God made me. And that's like just how we were. It's kind of like, oh, the Phaneufs are all big boys. Like my whole family is obese. All the men are obese. And when I started to see that, like, oh man, I can actually change this, like, which is it's a crazy thing to say now for me, like being a health professional, right? But I never tried. Like I never once tried to lose weight. I tried one time and now I'm here. It's like, that was my whole life.
Do you think your family like attaches their identity to being big? Because I've met guys that say they want to lose weight, but then there's this identity that's attached to that guy who's big and powerful and of that size that doesn't want to lose that.
Yeah, it was definitely, and, you know, like, obviously, when you're obese as a teenager, you know, I can speak candidly about it. It's like, I wasn't getting a lot of attention from any females. You know, just, I wasn't good at sports, which I was lucky that I always had kind of a realistic view, a bird's eye view of how the world worked, because that's what got me interested in, like, history and philosophy, because I started to realize that, okay, my body, you know, like today, it's like everyone's equal. I realized that everyone was not equal. Like, you know, like we go to do the chin-up bar and I can't even hang, and there's dudes just cranking out 10, 15, 20 pull-ups, you know? But I thought I need to develop my brain, my speaking, my articulation, because otherwise I'm going to be at such a massive disadvantage. So I started to work on some of that, and as like a young kid, like 11 years old, my mom bought me Marcus Aurelius' Meditations as my birthday present, you know? So I was just interested in some different things. But when I got into kind of losing weight, and I realized, wow, like I can actually do this. As soon as I saw it was possible, it just like flipped a switch. But previous to that, when you're a teenager and you're really big, you know, like I was way bigger than most kids. So I was like, and I was like tough farm kid, right? So there's like that kind of piece that I was holding on to. I come from a small town in Saskatchewan. There's lots of drinking. You know, by the time I was 16, I could drink 18 beer in a night, no problem. And I'm big, right? So blood alcohol levels stay low because you got lots of blood to fill a body like that. And you kind of get like notoriety and some attention from it, right? You're like the guy that can, you know, drink this beer, or like eat this food, right? We'd go after drinking or night or whatever, and I could eat, you know, 4 McDonald's meals, no problem. So there was that piece of like identity. That's the point of that is, yes, for sure. And it is kind of wrapped inside of that, my family circle. I'm the only one still that's not obese. So it's an interesting dynamic.
And how do they feel about that? Like when you visit, like does it?
It's weird. I'm not super close to my family, and I don't know actually. To be frank, I wish I knew. You know, like I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Like, do you think yeah, I guess, well, if you don't know, but like, I just wonder if they find it like inspiring what you've done, if they, it's motivating to them, or it's just, or maybe they don't care. Who knows?
Yeah, like my dad doesn't really comment on it much. Like I guess it's been my life for so long. I think it just feels normal to me. My aunts or uncles and stuff never really comment on it too much. And I don't see them that often, but when I do, it's never been a subject that comes up, and I never wanted to. I'm curious, to be honest, but I never wanted to ask like, how do you feel about the thing I did? It's kind of like a weird thing to ask someone, but
yeah, I mean, me and my dad are like pretty close, so like wouldn't be shy to ask any random questions like that. But
very fair.
I guess everyone's different.
Yeah, like for instance, my dad, I talked to him the other day. My dad is like just went on Ozempic. So like that's where he's at, and he's like struggles.
Do you ever want to try and help them with everything you've gone through?
I have a few times, and that's where it's just like the mindset. It's kind of goes back to like the identity thing, and like the desire to change. I just got bit by some bug. I almost don't even know why. Like it's almost such a fluke thing because I lost weight pretty rapidly. And I didn't exactly do everything right, like the way I would necessarily put myself through it now, but it worked out. And, my dad's the type who's been on 10, 20, 30, 40 diets since I was a kid, right, and never succeeded. And I tried one time, and now my whole life is fitness-based.
I used to have guys all the time from work, like, ask me for, do them a diet or something, and you spend hours because you want to help them out because they're your friend. And then nobody would follow it. And then just you come to a point where you're like, okay, no one's, unless they're ready for it, they're never gonna succeed. They have to hit that point where it's like, like where you hit, where you're like, I have to do something. Whether it was just because of a needle or not, you were like, no, I'm changing now. A lot of times, like, I just won't even bother to do it for people anymore. I mean? Like, show me you want it first. Like, maybe put in a month or two at the gym and that you're eating okay and that, you're worth like me to spend a couple hours to do something like that.
Yeah. Like you said, it's like I had multiple things kind of create a stimulus to change. Right. So like, again, ironic, funny that, a little insulin pen was so bothersome to me, but there was that. And I was 21 and I'm like on 3 different medications, and I was, again, I kind of watched that happen. And the difference is I was a lot younger. Like my dad and my uncles and stuff were at least a little bit in better shape for longer into their life. Like how old I am now, like 35, the train started to go. And I'm thinking, man, I'm only 21 and I'm already like here. And just getting out of a relationship, just being transparent as a 21-year-old guy, it's like, how valuable am I to a future partner like this? Not really. I just wanted to change. So luckily, I got bit by the bug and did something about it anyway.
I like it. So from there, how did you get into personal training?
So kind of almost like you said, it was like once I lost, 100 pounds or something like that, and then I kept going and ended up losing 150. But it's like people would just come to me because you did something, right? And that's no different than anything else. Like once you achieve, and I think people try and skip that step. Right, you achieve something, and then you have a story to tell, right, and that attracts people, right, because we see the world through a story. So people saw me go through a very dark time, change my life, overcome, and then that inspired some people. So just be like random people come up to me at the gym, I saw this, and social media was just starting to kind of take off at that time. So it had been like 2014, 2015, something like that. And as soon as that started to happen, I started to help some people for free. It was just like, hey, like I didn't know much, but like here's kind of how I was doing my diet. Here's how I'm doing my training, etc. I started to help a few people, and then I decided. And online training wasn't really even a thing then, certainly not the way that it is now. So I wanted to get a certification just for personal training because I was interested in it. I started working at a gym, got a few clients, bang, and then over the course of about a year, I was selling cars. And or like power sports stuff. I sold boats and quads and snowmobiles, a whole bunch of stuff. I would work Monday to Saturday, and I would train. I would work like 7 to 5, and then from 5 to 10, I would train clients at the gym, and then from 10 to 12, I would train myself, and then I would go home and sleep and repeat. And then I would like meal prep and get my stuff together on Sunday. I did that for like 2 years, and that's actually how I started to save some money to do my first supplement store. I was just hustling, just hustle mode, work, developing myself, learning my craft. And I've always been pretty lucky that if I put my mind to like learning something, I can obsess about it almost to like a manic degree and intake information very quickly and retain it. So I just picked it up really fast. I had a gift for it. I had a gift for teaching and coaching. I've always been good at speaking and fairly articulate. So when you're working with someone, especially a human being in person, and you can translate what you want them to do and they can actually understand it, I got a good reputation pretty quickly. You know, people were like, hey, this guy's really good, you know, it's a personal trainer. So I never really had that much difficulty getting clients, which I know is sometimes tough when you're a personal trainer or even online coach. And then at some point along the line, I probably did that for, like I said, 2 years, hustling, just saving. And then online coaching started to be a little bit more of a thing. So I started to transition some of those like in-person, that in-person time spent to doing online coaching. And then when I opened my first store, I was doing some coaching as well as like working at the store myself, basically.
Yeah, it seemed like a good fit. So the supplement store was 2 years after.
Yeah, it was probably, I opened my first store in 2018, and I pretty much probably had lost weight by like 2014. So it was probably a 4-year journey, something like that. It took me like 2 years to kind of go through taking the weight off on myself. And then there was a couple years of like in-person training, saving some money, hustling, starting to do some online coaching, and then open the store.
So is it just one store right now, or do you have?
So Braden and I have the one in Terwilliger here in Edmonton, and we're opening a second one right away.
Oh, crazy. Good for you.
Yeah.
So this will be number 3 for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one in Regina I no longer have now.
Okay. Oh, you sold it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was sold, and now I'll just have these two. I originally contemplated keeping that one. And I'll be honest, I was naive, right? So this is going back like a year and a half. I thought I'll have the stores there, and I was even planning on maybe doing more there while living here. And I just thought, like, we're going to open the gym, we're going to do stores here, like, I'm going to do all this stuff. And I had some people that are more experienced in business than me tell me, like, you got to be careful. You know, like, that's a lot. You coach athletes, you're doing this, and, you know, my ego and naivete was like, no, I'm going to do it all. And the more that people told me it would be difficult, it made me want to do it more. If I'm being honest, I'm pretty trade disagreeable. And then when I moved here, I started to realize, like, oh man, I don't want to go back to Saskatchewan really every 6-8 weeks just to check on the store. And it's much harder to manage when you can never put eyes on it. And I realized that its potential was limited by me, which wasn't fair to the business or to me. I was being split too many ways. So that's why we ended up just, you know, kind of settling all of my stuff here in Alberta. And the gym was a much more complex of a business opening. You know, I just thought, like, well, I've worked in gyms forever, and, you know, like, training at a gym and opening one is a very big difference.
Yeah,
you know, and just like as an example, you know, like even leasing the space, completely different zoning and designations than a supplement store. Right. So, you know, you kind of do the lease. And for us, it was like, oh, you forgot these 2 things. That's $60,000 now because the zoning isn't quite right. You have to put a new roof unit on. You have to do this. And it was like, oh, okay. You know, so all those things like I had to learn through. I basically went through university, right? Education costs money.
When like my first restaurant closed, I think like I had borrowed money from the bank, but I was on the hook for it was close to like 120,000 that I had to pay back. That was personally guaranteed. And I still to this day tell people, like, you couldn't buy the lessons that I learned in that 1 year in school. Like, yeah, it cost me a lot of money, but like you could never buy those lessons. So it's like, it was worth every penny. And, you know, like I took some of those lessons and here we are 6.5 years later, you know, we're still doing it. But, you know, it's no different than you guys with that building. It costs, you know, you make mistakes, you learn. You'll never make it again. Well, I hope not anyway.
I sure hope not. My grandfather had a good saying. It was kind of like men learn through pain. And either sometimes that pain is emotional, sometimes it's physical, and a lot of times it's money. It's like the three forms of learning. Sometimes it's all three if you're really unlucky. And same thing, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons from losing money in some sense, right? Because you learn what not to do.
Because I absolutely love your gym, but Braden filled me in about a month ago about the story of the equipment, which I think is worthy of a...
Sure, we can talk about it.
If that's okay.
Yeah, it's certainly okay. So we were buying equipment, like, you know, the gym has been open, I don't know, 4 months, something like that. We've probably been buying we started buying equipment probably over a year ago, maybe even a little longer. Braden already had some in his garage that he had just been buying through COVID, like, because he wanted a place to train, and he had bought some good pieces. So he had, 10, 12 pieces just packed in his garage. And that's kind of where it started. He was going to do a gym with some other gentlemen, like right before COVID. COVID hit, those guys backed out. They were kind of like investing in it, so they backed out. So that dream kind of died that he had originally envisioned. And me and Tyler were already working with him as coaches on Team Miller Elite, like our online bodybuilding coaching business. And I've always wanted to do my own gym. Tyler's always wanted to do his own gym. So, Braden had kind of talked to us individually, and then eventually we have a meeting, and he was like, hey, I kind of want to would you guys want to come together, the three of us? Let's do this. Sure. So we just started throwing money out. And gym equipment, especially niche gym equipment, this might be interesting because I don't think the general population understands this. A lot of these pieces that are in our gym, it's kind of like collecting cars or baseball cards or things that are not just like, you don't just go to the store and find them. Like some of our pieces came from over here in the United States, way across Canada. It's like when you want like that Nautilus pull down from 1987, it's not just, just order it up on Amazon and it's here in 2 days, right? So you go through a lot of brokers. And the interesting thing about that is oftentimes you give them money and then they go and find you something. So you give them their money before they even have a product, right? And we were dealing with a really reputable broker who I have a lot of friends that own gyms, like a few of them in Saskatchewan, a couple here, that had dealt with this guy who was really good, doing lots of business. So we started sending him, some money, like, here, find us that piece. And he was really good about finding us pieces, awesome. Some of the problem with that, we later found out, is he was kind of telling a lot of other people he would find them similar pieces and starting to get a little bit too busy and messing stuff up, right? So and it was nice because originally we had no space, or even when we signed the lease, we didn't have possession, or the flooring's not in, there's stuff you want to do before, because we had to renovate the whole space before the equipment just packed in the space. And this guy had warehousing. So it's kind of like, you just keep buying me pieces and I won't ship you anything until we fill a truck or two. So perfect for us, right? So, we're giving it money months and months and months. Anyway, lo and behold, it's time to start like thinking about getting the equipment here. So we start telling the guy like, hey, not right away, but the next 2 to 4 weeks, we should start lining up some trucks. Let's get these couple semis of equipment here. We're going to be opening, fairly soon. Our flooring's going to be done, etc. Communication, and it was really good. Communication was really good up until that point. And all of a sudden, like a couple of days and a little text back. And anyway, it started to feel weird. You have a vibe for these things, right? You've been around. It's kind of like something's not right. Started to ask a few other people. Fitness industry is pretty small, even, across North America. Asked some friends that are gym owners, and it's like, yeah, he owes me, a couple pieces, hasn't gotten back to me. Another guy says, yeah, he owes me $5,000. I paid him to do this, and man. So we started investigating harder, ended up finding like a group of people that were out pieces, started to look like, oh man, this is getting scary. And we kind of made a split decision choice that we ended up getting a hold of his girlfriend. This is through some like investigative processes, let's say, and ended up talking to her. And, this is a good lesson that sometimes you can catch, more bees with honey than you can with vinegar, because a lot of these other people that he'd owed money to, they were getting very aggressive, let's say. These are dudes in the fitness space, these are, kind of disagreeable type dudes in the bodybuilding space, right? And, threatening to, beat him up or, injure him and all this stuff. And we kind of didn't take that approach. So he actually ended up talking to us and he leveled with us. He was like, listen, I'm going like broke, basically. I'm overextended. His business in COVID, because I don't know if you remember, gym equipment was like the gold rush. Yeah. So he went from like making, like he had like a $200,000, year, $300,000 a year business to like $3 million in like 1 year. As a 24-year-old kid, just way in over his head, like leased the warehouses and equipment and, like just went in right over his head. Started stealing from Peter to pay Paul, right? Because especially in that type of business where a guy gives you money Now but I have to go find the thing. But if I owe another guy money, it's like, okay, well, I use that money to pay him, but now I don't have the money to buy the thing. You start kind of stringing that out, and lo and behold, you're pretty far behind. So we're the type of dudes that just take action. And I was at the gym one day. I look at my phone, 3-way call from Braden. And I answer it, it's him and Ty. And Braden says, hey, guys, we got to go to, this dude's from Arkansas. We got to go to Arkansas tomorrow because otherwise our pieces might be gone. Because this guy said, I have a warehouse full of pieces. Your pieces are here. And we had kind of paid him for shipping already. But he said, like, all my staff, I had to let go because I have no money to pay them. All my, like, forklifts and loaders and things, they came and picked them up because I haven't made any lease payments. And I don't have any staff and I don't have any money to, like, ship your stuff. But it's here. And we didn't know, we're freaking out, right? It's like, well, we just got to get eyes on it. We got to get there. So Braden's wife books us all flights. I realize 2 hours later, after this phone call, I'm like, where's my passport? And I'm in Alberta here, and I still own a house in Saskatchewan, where my wife was, and I realize my passport's in Saskatchewan. I'm like, shit. So I immediately it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm supposed to fly out the next morning. 8-hour drive. I just get in my car, just hold it to the rug all the way back. And I end up flying out of Saskatchewan. I met them back in Calgary, and then we flew to Atlanta, and then Arkansas, Little Rock. So we get to Arkansas. The dude actually picks us up. He picks us up, young kid, tells us, kind of what's going on. Brings us, so it's like midnight when we get in there. He says, like, I'll drop you guys off the hotel. I'll pick you up in the morning. We'll go get your pieces. Perfect. No problem. We were supposed to have all of our pieces, and I don't know if you remember, like when you walk into our gym, there's that old chain-driven rear delt fly, and there's a Bodymaster side lateral raise, and the red one, right? So all of our pieces were supposed to be refurbished, powder-coated, painted red and black, like our brand, like those ones, the whole gym. And we get to this warehouse, we pull up in the morning, and there's a cop sitting at the warehouse with the lights on. I'm like, that's weird. We get out of the truck. The door is busted open to this warehouse. And we get out, and Tyler's like, oh, my God, they stole your guys' stuff. So which, like, in hindsight is complete insurance fraud. Like he never had this stuff and then made it look like, like the cop had stole it. And then he says, but don't worry, I have another warehouse full of equipment, and you guys can just come, and some of the pieces you wanted might not be there, but you can kind of comb through it, and we'll make it right for you guys. Which, like, we're pissed off, to be honest, but like beggars can't be choosers. We're out $300,000, whatever it is. It's like we got to get something. He brings us to another warehouse. I've never seen so much gym equipment in my life to this day. It was like an old this is going to show our age, but like like the old Sears buildings, or like an old Walmart, like before they went super center. So not like quite as big as a Walmart, but like a big building, literally filled with equipment. And when I say filled, I don't mean organized, like here's the back pieces and here's nice rows. I mean the stuff was like pushed in the building until it just like wedged together, and they walked themselves out and closed the door. But there was no overhead doors in the warehouse. Just like a literal Walmart, like a sliding glass door. So you couldn't even get any equipment into the warehouse. So me and Ty and Braden are in this warehouse the first day for 20 hours straight.
Were you guys like kids in a candy store, though? Like picking through this stuff, or no?
Kind of, yes. But also, like, none of it was, like, refurbished the way that we were supposed to. There was a lot of pieces that we like hand selected that were not in that warehouse. So we're walking like on top of the equipment, like putting sticky notes on stuff that we're going to try and take. And we spent 20 hours just clearing paths, like so that we could get them to the door. And, so that was kind of the first day. It's just like, what pieces are in here of value? It starts to look like, okay, like it sucks. It's terrible. But there's pieces here that we can get pieces to open a gym. Like there's some good pieces here. Next morning, and again, learning, right? none of the three of us are not logistics expert. We know nothing about crossing a border with, like all the shipping, labeling, and all the stuff that's required to do all this. So Tyler's handling that, losing his mind, realizing we have to pay about another 25,000 USD to ship this stuff back that we already paid for. Braden's handling getting the permits and dealing with this guy that's kind of like not really doing his job, that kind of screwed us over. And luckily I'm just a good old country boy, so I have equipment operation experience. So I'm on the horn renting a Zoom boom so that we can load this stuff into the semis. So that's exactly what we did. We spent 4 days, basically no sleep at all, loading all that stuff up into trucks. Just 2 hours sleep, no food, just cranking it. And we had a couple guys from Maryland helping us that were in the exact same situation. So they had 2 trucks full of equipment, and so did we. So there was 5 of us at least, and I was operating, so I'm putting everything in the trucks, booming it into the trucks, and they were kind of like bringing it to the door.
So within that short amount of time, you guys were able to like arrange semis with like flat decks?
Complete chaos.
Really?
Like complete chaos, man. And lots of favors too, just like, hey, it's kind of one of those things like when you're in a pinch, you don't realize like what you can accomplish when your back's up against the wall. And one of the interesting things about that story is it just shows how like sometimes violent action is so appropriate, because so we spent like 3 nights, 4 days doing this, right? Kind of like 3 a.m. on the 4th day, close up the semis, and they had to sleep before they could drive, like in the parking lot, basically. We had to fly out in like 4 hours, so we go to a hotel, get a crappy sleep, get on our flight from Little Rock, which is a municipal. You can't get into Canada from Arkansas. There's no international airport. So we fly from Little Rock to Atlanta, get off the plane in Atlanta. One of the guys from Maryland that was on the plane with us, going back to where he was from, I get off the plane, Braden gets off the plane, this dude, Mark, was at the back. He gets off and just white as a ghost, and he's on his phone. And I'm like, what's going on? So he gets off the phone and tells us, he's like, yeah, the guy who was this equipment distributor called the cops and is trying to say that these semis are stolen. He's trying to get them to stay there. So now we're like, oh my God, we just loaded these semis, paid for them, and now we're going to get screwed out of that. And we like loaded them for him essentially, and he could like technically resell those again. Fire sale, you know what I mean? Like when you're going bankrupt.
The same guy, the 24-year-old, that this was all his stuff too. Do you think she's the one that called?
Yeah, 100%.
So he called originally at the first building saying, so it was almost like a setup on his end?
He was like, I think what it was is he just didn't expect, no one else went, right? Like he owed like 25 dudes money. It's just that us 3, Tyler, Braden, and I, and these other.
But he knew you guys were taking stuff.
Of course.
So he was still trying to call?
Yes, but I think when you're 24, and I'm leaving out some detail a little bit on purpose, but like we went there, like we're getting equipment or something bad's happening. It's like we weren't like really giving him a choice.
Yeah, and you don't want to get to that point, but when you're out this much money, like you have to do something.
We all have some interesting pasts,
Right.
And it was like no, like, and the dudes that were with us too. So there's 5 dudes there, and it's him by himself, and it's like no, we're taking this.
Yeah,
stuff,
I mean,
right?
just the 3 of you from the den alone is intimidating enough. Not even doing anything.
So anyway, and what was super interesting about that, anyway, he couldn't stop the trucks because they had already had like the seal. I'm not a logistics expert, but like they sealed them as you're gonna go across the border. They have to have like a seal on them. Once that happens, too bad, basically, because he already signed off on the bill of lading when we were there. So the truckers were like, no, too bad. Even with the cops there, cops said too bad, basically. So the trucks take off. Okay, there's a little bit of a breath there. The next morning, the trustee in which he had borrowed a bunch of money to like expand this business was there chaining up the door to those warehouses of the equipment. And there were still 1,000 pieces of equipment in that warehouse after we loaded 4 semis out of it. It was massive, right? So if we had not flown down there in 18 hours notice and we were 24 hours later, the den wouldn't exist.
That's crazy. Man.
But it was a trauma bond for the boys.
Yeah.
You know, like honestly, that was like war. It's like straight up Afghanistan
Probably
tour.
brought you guys closer.
100%, because
when
you
go
just
through that
problem
stuff
solve, violent action, and not knowing what you're gonna do. And I feel like persevering in that kind of back against the wall, it can build some confidence.
Yeah,
you know?
see, I didn't even know that. Like I always knew you guys like hand piece each piece of equipment, and I hype that all the time when I'm talking about the gym, because literally nothing's the same. Like you guys have many different brands. I didn't know that you guys even were gonna get everything color coded. Like I always tell people, I'm like, it's a mix match of stuff, but I love it. Like I don't know, it just gives it a really cool old school like bodybuilding vibe.
So you'll like this, just to kind of touch, and I don't want to get myself in too much trouble, but he had this warehouse business, like a refurbishment business, buying and selling equipment. It's pretty big. He also had a gym of like functioning. So this is a good part of the story. And it's big. Like it's like a version of the Den, but 3 times bigger. So some of the pieces that he had sent us pictures of, like, let's pull down the silver one. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about.
Like my favorite.
The plate loaded, right? Okay, yeah, so
literally.
that machine's like very hard to find. We had 6 months earlier, like, hey, find us one of these. He sent us a picture of one. I have one here, and it's very expensive. So like we paid him, and that wasn't in the warehouse. And there were certain pieces we were like pissed off, like, really want those pieces, you know? Literally, we walk 50 yards over here, and we go in his gym. The picture he sent us is off that gym floor. So he knew that he was never had it. That was just like a money siphoning thing. Me and Braden and Ty walk in there, and people are like training in there just as if the Den was fully functioning. I'm at the front door with the Zoom boom. And those 2 gorillas are just like, Braden says, like, how many sets do you guys have? And the guy's like, you want to work in it? Braden's like, no, I'm taking this piece right out of this building. Wow. So we start like hauling stuff.
While people are working
out. Right out of this building while people are working out.
Did anyone say anything?
So the dude who was the general manager of that gym for this guy, you know, like doing his job, his name is Will Withers. Great man. He's an IFBB Pro Classic Physique, ex-Army Ranger sniper. He was not happy. So like we're like in conflict with this dude that when we start doing this, we end up explaining to him like the whole situation, kind of showed him some proof, and he was like, man, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't realize like this was going on, you know, like I didn't know my boss was doing this, you know, with their it was like a different business, so he didn't really work for that other refurbishment business. So he was just like, do what you got to do. I understand. Like, no worries. He was a super chill guy. By the end of that weekend, he's now one of Braden's clients.
Wow,
Braden picked up a Pro Classic Physique client by the end of the weekend, and they're still working together. They did the Texas Pro 4 months later, and they're going to do another.
Didn't Braden fly down to go?
Yep.
That's amazing.
So it's just funny, you know, like end up going there, you know, in a little bit of conflict, and then he ended up hiring Braden as a coach. It's super funny.
Wow. You guys went through the ringer with this.
Absolute ringer.
Yeah.
It took me probably 2 weeks to like come back down to earth. Just vibrating for a week, you know, no sleep.
So you get everything back into Canada, the gyms. Then you guys was everything ready at the gym at the Den?
Yes, pretty much. Or like we had like half the flooring laid, basically, so we knew we could move it in, complete the other half of the flooring, move the equipment to the other side of the gym, and then lay the other side of the flooring, you know. So there was still a lot of work to do. We had some painting to do, but it was a lot of work, you know. Like all 3 of us, we laid that floor. Ty's father-in-law helped a lot. Jill's dad, amazing man, helped us a lot, did a lot of the carpentry work and stuff. But the 3 of us were there coaching our athletes. Braden and I were running our other businesses, and, you know, we laid most of that floor by hand, you know, and a lot of sweat equity went into that place.
Yeah, you guys done, it's packed full. You've done a great job. Lots of equipment. I recommend it to everybody. And I don't think I've ever had one person who's ever come back and be like, it's okay. Like everybody loves it. I have friends now who are like members already just from like a one-time drop-in. So
the community is pretty special.
Yeah,
I really honestly is.
Yeah, and truth be told, like if anyone's going, like I've been training my whole life. I go at least 5 days a week. I was even intimidated on my day one. So like I hope people can like go there and get past that, because the community is amazing, the equipment's amazing, everything about it is great. It's just when you're going into a gym and there's a lot of people that are fit and there's a lot of equipment that you don't see anywhere else. So like there's still stuff to this day that I don't even know how to use yet, but like that excites me because I don't want to go into, your big box gyms where it's the same life fitness stuff everywhere you go. And I've used it 100 times or thousands of times. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's really special. Like what you guys have done and the equipment you've picked out. Like you won't find it anywhere else in Canada, in my opinion.
No, I honestly think it's kind of one of the destination gyms in Canada, and we keep reinvesting into it. There's pieces. It's kind of like we're always paying attention because we're there so much. So it's like I'm always paying attention. We're always paying attention to like that piece is not really getting used that much. We should flip it out, right? We've already done that a few times. Or like, what do the members want to see? And I get it, like, and because the business is a lot of businesses are no different than yours, semi-social media driven, right? And then the people who are posting on social media are the people who have influence or the people who are confident in what they're doing and, all of that. So then from the outside, it really looks like a hardcore place. And I mean, we have a lot of people that train hard and a lot of strong people, a lot of in shape people for sure. But I always tell people like, you come there and feel that community. It honestly doesn't really matter where you're at. If you're ready to like work hard and, be pushed and ready to change, it's the nicest people. It's honestly like it's a great community. It's everyone's always spotting each other. I've seen so many people in a short time, like we've been open 4 months, making friends. Like where I'm like, oh, those people didn't know each other before the den. Now they're training together, or I see them, on social media. I'll see them like out for dinner or whatever. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to be a part of to bring people
guys
together
like building community. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I just asked, I think the first time last week for that spot when I was doing the squats there, and his name was Dan, came over to help.
Dan, super great guy.
Yeah, and he was training with a couple other guys, and like all of a sudden you have a bunch of people pushing you on. You know what I mean? Like and the two people that I know for sure got a membership there. I wouldn't say are like as hardcore of gym goers as like say you or I would be, and they just love it because it's like just being in the atmosphere. They say is pushing them further than they've ever pushed. And the one guy last week, actually, it was who I made the video on, like hit a PR for squats. And he's like, it's just being in this atmosphere is pushing me beyond my limits.
It is. I had a friend tell me that has his own gym. It's a pretty nice gym in Saskatchewan. He was like, the only bad thing is now you're not going to want to train anywhere else. And every time I travel now, I'm kind of like, I'll just wait till I get home. It's hard not to, but it's because there's such sentimental value to it to us too, right? When you had to fight to, just like I know a little bit of the background on Bite Me, it's like you had to fight to make this happen and keep it alive. And I think when that is the case and you're surrounded by passion, it just becomes something special. There's like a magical energy to it, at least to me when I walk in, And
that's the only downfall I find of social media. And I did a post about this not long ago, but it's just like, when you're on socials, it's really hard to post bad times, but like, man, I've gone through so many, but people just see the building and what we're doing and the other locations are like, oh, like he must be crushing it. Not knowing like what we've gone through to get here, like the struggles that you and I have talked about, like it's just, it was really tough. And, I'm 6.5 years in and like things are just starting to get rolling in my eyes. You know what I mean?
People want to model the success instead of the journey. So we just pull this apart a little bit. It's kind of like super successful entrepreneur you see on social media, and now he's doing all this morning biohacking and cold plunging and all this cool stuff, and I'm interested in all that stuff. But then if you revert back to the path up, it's kind of like, no, he was getting out of bed wondering where the next installment of injection capital is coming from, starting work the second he got out of bed, for years and years until he was able to put, or she was able to put themselves in that kind of position, right? So modeling the journey up versus modeling the end result, I think is super important. I'll be fully transparent. This year I took on so much that up until about 3 months ago, the plane was crashing. Like the plane was up at altitude. I started to invest in all this stuff. I overextended myself a little bit because as I told you, I was like, no, I'm going to do that store. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then you come up to some things that you don't know. It's like, hey, we need another $50,000 for that. We need another $50,000 for that. That happens a few times. And it's like, uh-oh, I'm vaporizing more money now that I'm taking in and the plane is crashing. So when you're in a position where it's like, I have to grab the joystick and I have to figure out how to pull this up before it hits the ground, or I'm going to run out of altitude. And I think that sometimes if you put your back against the wall and you find out what you're made of, it's really good for you. Yeah. I developed 5 years of wisdom in one from doing that. Yeah. You know, and it's super scary, and I'm not advising that necessarily as like a planned thing. But once I was in it, I was like, hey, there's no choice but to figure this out.
I always tell people, I think that, like, I know there's multiple ways to get to be successful, but staying at your job and taking on your side hustle and, you know, trying to make it that way, to me, just is never going to be the same as if you just go all in. Because when you're all in, you burn that boat, you have no other choice but to make it work. Like the day the restaurant opened for me, I was planning on staying, because I made $200,000 plus a year working on site up in Fort McMurray. I was planning on staying there for at least 6 months to a year. The day the store opened, I quit. I had money in the bank that was literally gone immediately just to keep the store going, like within a matter of days. And I'm literally at zero, and I just opened a restaurant. And you make it work. Like, I'm still here. You know what I mean? And had I stayed at my job and tried to like nurture this thing from the side, I don't think I would have made it.
Man, it's so interesting you say that, because I went through the same thing. You know, I was in corporate sales too. And, you know, when I decided to make the full move to like the supplement store and online coaching, same thing. I was making like $180,000 a year, you know, doing sales and consulting. It was kind of like, hey, I'm done with that now. It's going to be the next stage of my life. And let's see what you're made of, right? You have all these dreams, you have all these visions. I'm not going to do it trading time for money over here. It's kind of the thing that's like buying my soul and keeping that safety blanket on. But when the difficulties will reveal the world to you in a different way. And you don't know what you don't know until you start to see it that way, right? Like, change happens based on a need, right? So if you need to roll sixes, like I believe that's the type of guy I am. It's like, I need to roll sixes. And in my mental model, I'm always kind of telling myself that, like, there's no other choice. And whether or not that always works out is a different story. And I just look at it like, well, you learn something either way. And oftentimes you'll make it. As where if you had that safety and security that you were talking about, you wouldn't even be seeing the world lens that your eyes would open up to you is not even the same, in my opinion. You don't see the opportunities, you don't see the snakes, you don't see any of it, because you're kind of just operating in a different lens.
It might even sound ridiculous, but business goes in waves. And when things are going really good, I don't want to say really good to the point, like, obviously I don't want to be living in the trenches all the time. But when I'm in the trenches and I'm going for it, it's fulfilling, I'm working hard. And then you get to this phase where everything's just going really smooth. And like, for a while I felt useless. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Where should my time be? Like, I'm not really needed right now. Everything's running well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, like it's definitely gone in a few waves where, you know, things were going really well and then it crashed. Like 2022 was by far like, and that's, you know, granted, I'm now like, that was 4 years in, 5 years with the restaurant, and it was the hardest year I've ever had by far. 2022. Like, by far the load I carried, you know, how am I going to make payroll? Like, almost every single payroll, it's like, how am I going to make it?
Man, you know you know, 2023 was kind of like that for me. You know, I guess the tail end of it here has been a little bit like that. So, like, you know, the last bit of 2022 also into most of 2023, it's like, I thought I was strong before that. And you learn, like, holy man, there's levels of stress to this game. And, you know, we're just learning to play it. You know, I'm lucky enough, and I know you have some guys around you too. It's like, oh my God, imagine carrying that load. Right? So I'm still conceptualizing how to keep leveling up in the game. And I look at life like a video game. It's kind of like, how do I level up the skills? What do I not know that will put me in these other rooms or situations? And I'm always looking at it like that. And I think if you do that, you accept everything for what it is. And it's not like, oh, poor me, this happened to me, or yay me, this happened to me. It's just a byproduct of continuing to want to get better. Right? Because whether or not I'm happy or sad or stressed, stuff has to get done. And that's kind of the difference. Like, if you wake up sad tomorrow, that's great. And, you know, you can feel how you want, but there's still people that have to get paid. The meals have to go out. things that have to get done.
100%. I just find now, especially after what I went through last year, is I don't carry it as long anymore. Like when things happen, I know I can deal with it internally. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, this is just another phase. I've been in business 6.5 years. I've never not made it. You know what I mean? Somehow you always prevail because you make it work. So I don't hold on to it as long anymore. You know, it might come into my life and I might get stressed for a moment, and then I can move on a lot faster from those experiences.
I think that when you find the purpose and meaning, that is the ship that's going to sail you through the storms, right? So for you, as you kind of narrowed out and removed some of the pieces out of your life that were no longer serving you and started to align with some people and things that were, that's why you don't carry it as long anymore. Or that's at least what happened for me. I shouldn't speak for you, but that's what happened to me is, like I started to realize, because my life has changed so much to where I can't even conceptualize it. Like if someone would ask me in 2021, do you think you'll be at X in 2022? I would have said no. And then if I would have done that again this year, no. So it's kind of like an undescribable, unknown path. And it's almost like the adventure of a lifetime when you let it be.
Yeah. That's what I love about business. Like,
me too.
It's just, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade this for the world, even with the struggles, because I just love getting up and doing what I do. And my cup is so filled with this, company I can't imagine ever doing anything else. Like if someone walked in here and was like, I'll give you 10 million tomorrow for you to walk away, I wouldn't take it.
That says something.
I think like, yeah, I'd probably fall into like a state of depression, just not being able to do something that fulfills me as much as this does.
We've had people offer us, decent amounts of money to, even do like another den or, like be a part of it. Yeah. And we're kind of the same. It's like, yeah, but how do we replicate the 3 owners? Like, let's face it, the community is what it is because we're there. Yeah. Right. So like, I don't know if that's a piece I don't know if the gym can be replicated, at least at this point in time, so young, without those pieces there. And I feel like a crazy person saying that, to be quite honest, because sometimes to me, like, yes, the equipment's good and, we got some amenities and that's all very cool. But I have so many people telling me, like, it's you guys. Like, we like coming here because of you and Braden and Ty, which if you're trying to remain humble and not have too much of an ego that's out of control, it's hard to conceptualize that, right? It's like, you're coming here for me. Seems weird, right? But that's the writing on the wall.
Yeah,
anyway,
no, I agree. And I learned that lesson. I mean, we opened up a location in Calgary. I've always had a really good culture here. I'm in here every day. Everyone knows who I am. I'm back there. Like if they're grinding and need help, I'm grinding right with them. So the culture is built. I couldn't do that in Calgary, and it got away from me. In Calgary, the store, I ended up closing it last November.
Did that hurt?
It didn't hurt in the sense like my ego wasn't hurt that I was closing it. It hurt more that I didn't give it the attention that it deserved.
Did you feel responsible?
I always take responsibility for everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Everything's my fault around here.
Has to be.
But it was a huge lesson for me because the store was doing great numbers. Like the store was really doing good. It's just bad leadership on my behalf, right? And I didn't create the culture. So we closed it. And then, kind of going over the numbers and be like, I think we can make this work. Granted, I have people now that can help me with that, which I needed before and I didn't have. I have Jason, who's now our culinary director, who helps me kind of oversee everything as far as the locations. But I didn't have that before, and we were up to almost 60 employees, right? So it was really difficult to try and manage everything. And I had so much going on here because this kitchen was just being built and, the construction, and I really just ignored Calgary. And so this time around, it's been so much different. It's just, I'm like, we're in communication with the staff much more, you know what I mean? Like we have our weekly calls and we try and stay in line so we don't let it fall apart like it did last time.
I mean, no wonder payroll was stressful at 60 employees. That's a big chunk.
What's crazy is that I had that many employees with almost half the sales that we have now. It was really stressful. We were probably over 50% payroll of our sales, and it's just like, yeah, it was difficult, because you're hiring and things start to grow. So I would, you go hire a bunch of people and then things slow down for the summer and now, but you know what I mean? Like I didn't lay anybody off or anything. So we were overstaffed for a little while. Yeah, it was just, everything was just difficult. You know what I mean? But we got through somehow. I'm like looking at the payroll numbers now, sometimes payrolls would be, 150 or more
That's
in a month.
that's a lot going out, right? So especially if you're, so I have a question for you. How important do you think it is to have kind of the right people? You and I talked about this a little bit in person, even today, I think, or the other day, that maybe have some different skill sets than you. Because I was kind of always like a lone wolf in some sense. Like, any success I cultivated, I was very egotistical with it. Like, I will make this work, and I will do it, and all of that. And one thing I learned with doing the gym and some of the stuff I'm doing with Braden, you don't know what you don't know, right? And, Braden and Ty have differing business degrees, so they're very analytical, very spreadsheet driven, and I'm not like that at all, right? And it sort of opened me up to like, holy man, this is this whole world over here that I'm not that interested in, if I'm being truthful, and B, I don't know anything about it. So like, how can it not be better? If you see value in it, right? And I know from your path, there's been some changes where I think you've had some people help you too. So it's really fun to see.
I wouldn't be here without the people that we have. 100% Bite Me would be gone, and it's like you and I talked the other day at the gym, but like, we're the visionary type. Like I've always known where I want to take Bite Me. I can see it. I visualize it. I have the things that I'm strong at, my strong assets, and I'm okay admitting what I'm not good at, which is the finance side. And we have people for that now. You know what I mean? And I need those people, and without them, I'd be lost. And I'm totally okay with admitting that. And I just listened to a podcast not long ago with Dana White when the UFC was struggling, and I think they were $40 million in the hole before it kind of really took off. And they were like, he's like, day after day we're in finance meetings, and he's like, I absolutely hate finance. Like, Dana White is the driver of the UFC with the vision to where he wanted to take it, but he didn't want to deal with the finances. He wants to do what he wants to do, and he does what he's good at. You know what I mean? And I think that would be Dana. Like what we're the position you and I are in. So I really feel like people like your Braden and Tyler, you guys all really complement each other very well. And I think if you guys did ever expand, I think you have the capabilities to do it. You know what I mean? It's just culture is everything. So you need to replicate that culture with your staff and the people at the other next location if you decide to do it.
Yeah, they're, I'm really grateful for them. Just they see things so much differently than me. They handle a lot of our finance stuff too, because I'm much like you, and I've heard Dana doing interviews and stuff where he's just kind of like, I don't know, do we have money? That's like, because I love the art of making it. Yeah. Like, I love the deals, I love selling, I love all of that, negotiating, love. But after it's done, the managing of it, I just don't care that much.
Don't get me wrong, I got big goals, but if I was in it for the money, I would be involved more on the money side. I don't care. Like, I love what I do. I obviously want to grow this thing to, a level that no meal prep company has ever seen. That's my goal. But I don't do what I do for the money. I literally love coming into work every day. You know what I mean? Like, this
I get excited. I wake up with like fire in my blood. Yeah. I wake up like, good. There's something to do.
Yeah, and I'm the same as Dana White. Like, do we have money? Like, are we making payroll, or can we buy this? You know, like, someone else can figure that part out.
That's literally me too. Like, hey, how much money do we have? Do we have ad spend? Do we have? Can I hire this marketing person? It's like that, and I like that. And I think that when you have people that compliment you, it's really useful. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, what is the vision for Bite Me? I've always been super curious about this.
Globally would be, a huge stretch, but I want to be all across Canada and the US for sure. Yeah. And I mean, you see my background, you're motivated by it. I have $1 billion account balance on my phone background.
I liked you. I seen that and I was like, I fuck with this dude.
And a lot of people would probably look at that and be like, oh, he just wants money. But like,
no, it's a byproduct.
It has nothing to do with like, even if I had $1 billion right now, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go buy all these. I'm sure there's be some nice things I want to buy, but man, like the fact of the lives I can change. Like, I'm always like, oh, like, how can I get this employee to 6 figures? Or, like, how can I get this person to make more money? Or I'd love to buy them a car or buy my family a house. You know what I mean? Like, I think money gives you, it just helps elevate things. I don't think money buys you happiness for sure, but I think it can ease the struggle.
You know what? I've been very hesitant to talk about money publicly. It's kind of like a taboo thing in some sense. And as I get a little bit more of my own own success, let's say, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think, you know, those terms are like thrown around a little bit without understanding context, right? So like money doesn't buy you happiness. I moved out at 15 years old with just like the backpack on my back. I can tell you that like wondering if you're going to be able to buy groceries there's no form of happiness that comes from that either, right? So yes, there's certain amounts of money that aren't going to like bring you happiness per se, but when you have a little bit more freedom and the ability to help people you care about and show them some different experiences on earth, I would say that that's more likely to produce happiness than not. Yeah. There's a reason that people who acquire wealth don't give it away to become happier. Like once it's like, and I think that a lot of people with money have done a good job at the very top. Like we're talking, some of the elites kind of like, it doesn't buy you happiness, because it's like, then you're okay with what you have maybe. Right?
Andy Frisella says it all the time. He's like, it's no different if you get a brand new Toyota, 6 months, you're sick of driving it. It's the same thing when he buys a Lamborghini. 6 months, he's sick of driving it. It's the same thing. You know what I mean?
The material stuff wears off.
I think the fulfillment comes from like, I have some staff here who's worked really, really hard to help get us here. It's like, man, if I could pay you this, or I can give you like a $50,000 bonus to go like change your, like, help your life or whatever, like that. Yeah, that would be amazing.
That's super cool to me. I love that too. And just, whether it's, giving someone a raise, giving someone a promotion, giving them opportunity to earn it, it's so much fun to be able to provide that.
Yeah. So yeah, we got lots of plans for growth, and hopefully 2024 is the, good for you guys as well.
Yeah, of course, man. And obviously, we kind of collaborate a little bit, and if there's anything I can do to help, I will for sure.
I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on.
Of course.
And I'm sure we'll be doing another one here in the near future.
Appreciate you, man.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.